Yo people, it's your boy Ali with what is hopefully going to be another YouTube banger. I'm going to really talk about how to ace your first high ticket sales call. My other videos have kind of touched on mindset and a few tips before we jump into the actual sales. But today I'm just going to dissect the exact framework that my team use at Smile White. You know, my closers that are making 15 to 20k a month in commissions. We're going to break that all down for you. Make sure you're taking notes, get your notepad and pen out. Any questions you have, feel free to DM me on Instagram at Ali Dalgoose. And yeah, we'll go from there. Enjoy the video. Any questions, drop them in the comments. And of course, make sure you subscribe. Let's get into it. Now, let's dive straight in on how to ace your first high ticket sales call. Now, first of all, the goal of this video is to give you a clear visual structure for high ticket sales calls so you don't waffle, panic, or sound needy, because they are the worst things you can do as a beginner and you will make no sales. Trust me, this is from experience. When I started doing my calls at Smile White with no sales experience, just learning on the job, for the first few weeks, I was panicking, I was just waffling on, and I kind of like needed the sale, which just pushed the buyer back even more, made them resistant, and I made no sales. So you're learning it from me who's done it before. The call stages when you're on a call, first of all, you got to open the call and frame it, give a little intro about the call. You got to diagnose their pain. So, in the discovery phase, find out, what their pain is. Agitate the problem. So ask them questions that make the problem seem worse in their head and remind them of their emotions. Then present the solution. And then, of course, close. So first of all, let's look at a bird's eye of how a call structure should look like. First thing is the open or frame. So this is where you're setting the agenda to the call, you're taking control, and you're lowering their barrier. Remember, guys, the person you're speaking to is a complete stranger. They've never met you, you've never met them. They feel like you're going to sell to them, their barrier's up, they're resistant already. It's your job in the first few minutes to build that rapport, find that common ground, lower their barrier to make them feel more comfortable and more likely to say yes. Now, the second part is diagnosing their pain. Understand where they are, what hurts, and what they want. Now, I use these two words, diagnose and pain. Those two words are something that a doctor does. They diagnose pain. As a salesperson in that discovery phase, you are a doctor. You're a professional medic finding out exactly what's wrong with their life right now or whatever is happening. Find out what's wrong, because if you don't know exactly the problem they have, you can't give the right solution. So, in this discovery part, you're not a salesperson anymore, you are a doctor. Make sure you listen more than you talk and ask deep questions. Anything they say, take notes. Just like you should be taking notes for this video, take notes to anything they say so you can refer back to it later on in the call. Agitate the problem. So make the cost of staying the same feel real. Make them really understand that if they stay the same, so will their problem. It'll stay the same too. Then once you've agitated the problem and hit the emotional side of the brain, you want to present the solution, which obviously is what you're selling. So you need to map your offer directly to their problems and goals. Then, of course, close. So you're going to close a deal. Before you do that, value stack, give them the price, and then get a commitment with a closed questions. So give them two options, finance or PIF, and say which do you prefer, rather than asking like an open question like how does that sound. So yeah, that's a little overview of the call map and what we're going to go through. I'll break it down more into stage one. So stage one, open/frame. Here's what to do: build quick trust, set expectations, and lead the call. Now, build quick trust in the intro to let them understand what the call is going to be about, because throughout the whole call, if they don't actually know the structure and how it's going to work, they're going to be a bit confused. They're not going to be fully focused. So build quick trust, set expectations, and lead the call. The worst thing you can do as a salesperson is ask them questions in the discovery phase and let them just yap on for 10 minutes. They need to understand that you're in charge of the call and you're the boss. If they feel like you're in charge, at the end when you're asking for the close, you're also in charge. They've got to give you an answer. But if they feel like they're in charge, it's very easy for them to say, I want to think about it. Let me get back to you. I'll call you back in a few days, because they feel like they're the boss. But no, you are. Now, when I say build quick trust, like I mentioned before, you're a complete stranger. You need to understand who they are. They need to understand who you are. You need to break the ice a little bit. It's just like when you meet a new girl, right, at a date. You're both nervous. You both don't know each other and who you are. So it's important that when you're on a date, you kind of break the ice, you have a little laugh, you find something in common, and then build from there. You don't ask to marry her straight away. You build that trust. So it's the same thing with a customer. When you tell the customer the price and ask for a commitment, you're essentially asking them to marry you. if you've not done the back end work like building trust, finding that common ground, setting expectations, how can you expect them to part ways with a few £1,000? That doesn't make sense. Set expectations. So let them know that at the end of the call, you're going to go through the payment options, finance options, and if it's a good fit, we'll get started and go through the next steps. And that's so they understand that on this call, they're going to make a commitment. Whether it's a yes or no, they're still going to commit to something. Now, here's a little tip. You need to understand that you're a stranger to them. Build rapport and find some common ground ASAP, whether it's gym, pets, sport, etc., whatever it is. And in one of my videos, my first YouTube video, the 8 sales golden nuggets, I actually talk about the pre-call strategy, where you basically stalk their social medias before the call. I know it sounds a bit weird, but you understand what they like, and you can subtly enter that into your pitch, obviously without making it obvious that you stalked them. So for more info on that, just click on the video above. I'll link it over there so you can have a look at that. Now, here's how to frame the call in the first few minutes. Just so we're on the same page, Janice, and by the way, make sure you take notes. Just so we're on the same page, Janice, the goal for this call is to figure out where you're at, what you're trying to achieve, and whether what we do is actually a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us. If it is, I'll show you what that looks like. If not, I'll be straight with you and point you in the right direction. Does that sound fair? Now, let's just dissect that a little bit. So first of all, what you've done there is you're making sure she understands, or he understands, that you're trying to help them. You're trying to help them achieve their goals, help them trying to better themselves, and fix their problem with your solution. But what you're not doing is being like every single other salesperson where they just sell to anyone, sell, sell, sell. Of course, guys, whoever's got money, whoever we can help, we're trying to sell to them. Of course we are. But if you say to them and if you act to them like you don't need them and they might not be a good fit for you, they'll actually start selling themselves to you rather than you selling to them. Now, which other salesperson is doing that? Most salespeople are just selling, selling, selling. They're waffling on. They're painting loads of features to their products and service, and they're just boring the customer. But here, if you say, we make sure you're a good fit for us, that's showing that you don't need them, that you've got an exclusive program or service or product, whatever it is, and it builds that scarcity and makes them want to go for you and work with you even more. Now, if it is, I'll show you what it looks like. So again, 9 times out of 10, there will be a good fit. We're just saying that to build that scarcity, but it's showing that if it's not the right fit for her or him, you'll point them in the right direction. So again, in their head now, they're thinking, oh, this is not for everyone. I want to know more. I want to know more. So that's how you should frame the call at the start. And just a little bit more on that, you should really introduce the call, how it's going to work, how long is the call going to last, or what you're going to go through, just so they have a full understanding of how that call is going to work. I've actually got a full framework script to discuss at the start of the call, so just DM me the word framework and I'll get that over to you. But people really sleep on the framework of a call, and it's the most important thing because it sets the tone. We talk about first impressions. The way you frame your call is the first impression. And if you don't frame it at all and let them know what the call is going to be about, they're just going to be confused. They're going to be lost throughout the call, and you're going to reduce your chances of getting that close. Now, here's some common beginner mistakes, right? And mistakes that I base, I'm speaking from experience. Just jump straight into the pitching with no context. So you just jump straight into your sales pitch, talking about your product or service, features, benefits, whatever, but you have no context. You haven't asked any questions. You've not framed the call so they know what it's going to be about. You've not built any report. You just jump straight into it. No agenda. It just feels like a really random chat. So again, there's no structure. There's no actual reason for the call. You're just speaking to them for the sake of speaking. Overexcited, talking too fast, trying to win them over. So again, a common trait when you're nervous as a salesperson, especially when you're new, is you just talk too fast and you ramble, which to them just comes across like you're just trying to win them over, and it just seems like you're overexcited, which for them is just a red flag. Why are you going to be excited? They should be excited to be speaking to you right now. Another thing is you'll have an apologetic energy instead of confident leadership. So an example that I hear a lot is, appreciate you joining the call. I won't take too much of your time. That's probably one of the most common examples I hear my salespeople say that obviously don't say that anymore. But when you say, I won't take too much of your time, you basically mean that you need them, not they need you. And you need to change that whole mindset frame before you jump on any sales call. As soon as you jump on a call, you need to remember that prospect or customer has a problem. The company you're selling for is a solution, and you are that bridge to that problem solution. So Let me just map it out just to make sure it's as clear as day, because I don't want you to make the mistake. So here's the customer. That's customer X, whatever the name is. They have a problem. We'll call it P because I'm not very good at writing at this. Your company, Y, is solution, so we'll call it S. And this bridge here is to get them from X to Y. And this is U. This is A. We'll say A for Ali. And you are the solution. So remember that. So remember, customer X has a problem. Y, which is your company, is the solution. A, salesperson, you are the bridge. So you are the bridge from that problem to the solution. So always remember that. Now, stage 2 of the call is diagnosing the pain. And this is the most important thing. This is where you're tapping into their emotional brain to remind them why they're here. Because remember, guys, they might have booked this call a week ago, 2 weeks ago, at 2 a.m. at night when they felt the pain. But when they're on the call with you now, 2 weeks later on a 5 p.m. on a random Sunday, they probably don't remember the pain like they did on that night. So it's important you remind them of their emotions, because remember, guys, people buy with emotions and justify with logic. So you really got to be emotional and tap into the emotional side of the brain. So here's a few questions to ask that I want you to write down. So, and again, when you ask questions, your tone is so important, a curious tone. So please, Janice, just walk me through where you're at right now with X area. First question. Again, see my tone, it's curious. I'm tilting my head a little bit. I'm really interested in the answer. Now, whenever they answer these questions, make sure you write it down and take notes so you can refer to these notes later on. What are your numbers like at the moment? So, for example, if you're selling an info product to a coach who wants to scale his coaching business, what are your numbers like at the moment? Now, just tell me, what's the big goal that you've got for yourself in the next 3 to 6 months? Again, you're looking at their goals, and that makes you seem like you're on the same team as them. Who else is asking them what their goals are for the next 3 to 6 months? Probably their own family are not even asking them. Probably their own closest friends are not asking what's their goals. And you're a random salesperson asking them what their goals are. They're going to connect with you. They're going to feel like you care. And you can use those goals to really see how your business can help them and tailor your script towards their goals. What have you tried so far to fix this? So this is a really important question because it shows you how far they are down the buying stage. If they've tried a few different options and they've not worked, it's important for you to find out why they've not worked so you can understand what their issues are and what they don't like in the past, so you can make sure your product or service isn't similar to what they've tried in the past. If they've not tried anything, it's important to ask, why is it only come to you now to try fix this? What's happening? What's going on? Is there, your mortgage is coming out soon, or you're gonna have to remortgage, or you're late on your car payments because you got sacked from your last job? There must be a reason why they're looking to fix this now rather than 6 months ago. So it's important you find that out, because that is their motivation. That's what they're trying to achieve. And another example answer, which is a forward thinking answer, is I want to fix this now because I know in a year I've got my wedding coming up. I'm going to have to pay for the wedding. So their motivation is to pay off that wedding. So all the way through the call, you can refer back to that dream wedding that they want when you're speaking about your solution and how it can help them. What happens if nothing changes in the next 3 to 6 months? This is where you kind of get them problem thinking. They're going to think about problems of what happens in the next 3 to 6 months that'll most likely scare them. And that scared feeling will turn them to take action. So, for example, the scared feeling could be, I'll have to cancel the wedding because I won't be able to afford it. So they'll feel scared of that feeling and they're more likely to go ahead with you. So it's important you let them look into the future rather than their current state right now, and how their future can be better off with your program and how it could be worse off if they don't make any changes. So let me just repeat that. How their future could be better off with your program in the next 3 to 6 months, or worse off without your program if nothing changes in the next 3 to 6 months. It's important they feel that contradiction between X, which is taking action, and Y, which is just staying the same and not taking action. Now, here's what you're listening for. You're listening for their current situation, so in detail, right? What their current situation is now, how much they're making a month, what struggles they have, um, what made them want to take action, like, their family member is doing the same thing and making a lot of money. You need to understand the situation right now, their desired outcome, where they want to be. So whether that's making 20K a month, whether that's going traveling around the world, whether that's retiring their parents, what is the desired outcome out of this, any obstacles that could come in the way, such as strategy, skill, systems, mindset, resources. So anything they feel like could hold them back from succeeding with your program. Urgency. So you listen to urgency. Like, is this pain now or later? So if you ask them a question like, why do you feel like you want to get started onto this program to better yourself and get to X, Y, Z? And they just give you a very vague answer and don't really discuss much detail, they're probably not very urgent. If they paint a painful picture of how it'll look in the next 6 months if they don't do this, such as, like I said, they won't be able to afford their wedding or they'll be evicted, that's when you know they're urgent. Now, here's some mistakes that most people make, and this first one is the most common one. A lot of people ask shallow yes-no questions. I call them closed questions. They ask a question to the prospect, and the only answer they can give you is yes or no. There's no point in those questions because you can't understand them on a deeper level. You can't understand their wants and needs because all they're saying is yes or no. So it's important you ask open-ended questions. So, for example, a mistake could be, do you feel like XYZ program, which will get you XYZ, could help you? Yes or no. That's a yes or no answer, right? Or how is it you'd feel that if you got accepted onto XYZ program and you were to make 10x more a month, and if you were to make £20,000 a month, how would that make you feel? And the second question, which is the way the pros do it, is how would you feel, John, if you got accepted onto this mentorship program, whatever you want to call it, and in the next 6 months you're making $50,000 a month, like we mentioned? Just tell me a little bit more about how that would make you feel, because answers like these, they make my day. They make my job worth doing, and that's why I enjoy it so much. So, how would that make you feel? So again, I'm asking an open-ended question where they can talk and give me a detailed answer, but they're not just talking to me. When you say something aloud, you're talking to yourself, which means you're reliving that pain and feeling in your own mind. That's why it's so important when you ask a question, don't just let them answer it and shut off it. Recap the question and answer to them. So if they give you an answer of how that would make them feel, it would make them feel amazing because they'd have financial freedom, their kids will be able to go to private school, whatever it is. You repeat the answer to them. So, John, just to make sure I've got all the points, down correctly. So just remind me again, you want this financial freedom so you can take your kids to private school, you can pay off your mortgage, and you can retire your mum. Is that correct? Anything else I've missed? Now that is so powerful. When you repeat back the answer to them, it is so powerful because it enters their brain on a different side that it came out of, if that makes sense. They think about it again, and it's so deep. So make sure whenever someone gives you an answer, an emotional tied answer, make sure you repeat it back to them to fully confirm what they said. And it also shows that you're listening as well. Interrupt or talk over them. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen more than you talk. A lot of salespeople just ramble on when they're nervous. They just talk, 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 waffle, waffle, waffle. The salesperson, just keeps on going. The prospect's going to get bored. They're going to get tired. They're going to get pissed off, and they will not buy. They skip the diagnosis and just rush to the pitch. Like I said, guys, we are a doctor. If we don't know their problem right now, we can't give them a solution. So it's important you understand their problem. You ask questions at the start to find out, what they're struggling with. Then you go into your pitch. But remember, when you're going into your pitch as a salesperson, that first part of the call, the information that you gathered, it's important you tailor your pitch to that information. Don't just have a one size fits all. Everything you say, tailor it to that problem that they have. And it's so important that when you find their why, so their why is so important in sales, why they're doing this, you don't just leave it stored to one side and ignore that question and never ask it again. The answer they gave you to that why, always use it throughout your call and always relate back to it. So for example, I'm going to give you an example so it's fully clear. If their why they want to do this is, they want to buy a new car within 6 months rather than 12 months or, 2 years, when you talk about your one-to-one coaching mentorship that gives them 2 live calls a week, which allows them to get results a third of the time quicker than any other mentorships, link that to how that means they can get their car in 6 months like they want rather than 2 years. Again, you're linking it back to their motivation. Talk more than they listen. Obviously, we've already touched up on that here, but you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so use them wisely. Now, stage 3 is agitating the problem. You need to make the cost of staying the same tangible, whether it costs them more money, more time, or gives them more stress. You have to really exaggerate this issue if they don't change anything now. Now, here's some prompt questions that we can ask. If nothing changes in the next 6 to 12 months, what does that actually look like for you? Of course, give them time to answer and repeat back to them to make sure you fully understand what they've said. Roughly how much do you think this is costing you each month? Now, always remember this answer, because if it's costing them, 2 grand extra each month to do this, which is 24 grand a year, if your package is in £6,000 over 3 months, which is only 2k a month um, for 3 months, and they say that's too much, then that doesn't make sense, because they'll be saving a lot more with your program, even though they've spent a little bit. Then ask them roughly how much you think this is costing you each month. Now, when they answer this, make sure you save these numbers for later on when you drop the price, because let's say the cost of inaction is 2k a month that they're wasting. That's £24,000 a year. Let's say, for example, your program is £10,000 over 6 months, which is, 20k over the year. That's 4k that they'd be saving on the first year with no actual increase. So obviously you're going to be selling a product for 4k less, so they can't say it's too expensive, but that product or service that you're selling is going to in turn make them more money for the next year. It's just an example, but they're actually gaining £4,000 a year by going with your program or service or product for the first year. Then the second year they'll be making money when they're putting into action, etc. Again, your program's not going to be a year long. I'm just, making an example just to help it sit in your mind. Where does this hit you the hardest? Is it the income side of things, like having more money? Is it the time, you're working 7 days a week, no time to spend with your children? Is it the confidence side of things? You need to find out that prospect, what they care about. Guys, not everyone cares about money. Some people don't give a shit about money. They want to spend more time with their family. They want to stop working full time for their own boss. They want to work for themselves and spend more time with their kids. They want to be more confident. They want to buy those new clothes to make them more confident. People have different motives, and it's important you find them. Reframe. Remember, you're not bullying them, you're helping them be honest about the real cost of staying stuck. Now, you got to reframe your mind that you're not manipulating them, you're not bullying them, you're just helping them see the honest truth about the real cost of staying stuck. That's the way to look at it. Now, again, some mistakes that I always see: too scared to go deep, they just keep everything surface level. So, for example, someone asks you, why is it you want to do this? And that's because I want to retire my mum. Then the next question you need to ask is, why is it that you want to retire your mum? What has she done for you through your childhood for you to retire her? And another question, when you do retire your mum, how would that make you feel? That is when you're going deep and you're not going to the surface level. But a lot of beginner salespeople will just stop at the, I want to retire my mum. No, dig deep, find the surface pain so you can hit their emotions harder. They overdo the pain. They sound manipulative. A lot of salespeople I see, especially ones that are watching American sales trainers, they just really ask all these questions and create this curious tone, and they just overdo it. And it sounds like they're quite creepy and just manipulating that person. So you have to get a fine balance of, yes, making them feel the pain, but not overdoing it. They make them feel judged, not understood. You need to make sure that they feel like you understand them, because that'll build more trust and give you better answers. If they're giving you the answers to the question, you're just writing them down and moving on, they'll feel judged. But if you can actually relate to their answers and say, actually, I was in a similar situation with you 6 months ago, then that'll help them open up to you more, because they feel like you're on the same level, and you'll get better answers. They don't reconnect this pain later when presenting a solution. This is so important. Reconnecting the pain is so, so important. A lot of people, they get their motivation, they get the pain of the customer, the emotional side at the start in the discovery phase, and they leave it at the discovery. No, you need to be revisiting this every so often to make sure it stays fresh in their mind. So at the middle of the call, whenever you're mentioning something, recap it to their pain, recap to their motivation. At the end, before you drop the price, recap the pain, recap the motivation. Keep going over it over and over again to make sure it stays fresh in their mind and you hit their emotional brain and they don't forget about it. Stage 4, presenting the solution. This is where you present the price, present your offering, and you go in for the close. So, the structure, most important thing, you need to recap their situation in 1 to 2 lines before you drop the price. Let them remember why they're here and how you can help them. You need to show how your solution maps to each key problem that they have. Case studies, social proof. Share 1 to 2 relevant win or case study from recent customers that you've got right now. People want to see this so they can trust you, and they want to see how you've helped people similar to them. Now, don't just pick a random case study that has nothing to do with them. Pick something that's similar to them. For example, if they want to go from 5K a month to 20K a month, and you've got a similar case study from someone who went from 7K to 22K, use that one. Don't use one that started at 15K and now is at 100K, because that is not relevant to them. They won't feel like that's possible. So use one that is relevant to them. Explain how it works in simple steps. In the information phase of your call, you're going to go into a little bit of detail to show that you know what you're on about, to give them information, but sometimes you can overwhelm them. And if before the close they still feel overwhelmed, they're going to have more reason to think about it, to think about it, to think about it. But if you simplify it into a few tangible bullet points and reminding them what you discussed, then they won't need to think about it because they'll understand it fully. So that's the structure there. Column 2, some example language that you can use. So based on what you've told me, you're here at X, but you want to be here Y, and Z is in the way. Is that correct? What do you say? Now, what we do is we help X go from Y to Z by simple method. For example, client result, very similar to your situation because of reason. So here's some example language you can use. Of course, the bullet points are there because we want to make it so it's usable to everyone. But here you can see a little base method of how it all works. I've actually got 20 questions that you can ask customers in the recap phase before you close, and give the price, which is probably the most important part of the call. So just DM me the word recap and I'll go through that with you. Now, another set of mistakes people make is they just drop loads of features about their product or service, but it doesn't link to any of their pain or goals. So, for example, a feature of your product or service could be that you help coaches scale their online community, for example. But that coach that you're speaking to try to sell your product to doesn't even have an online community because they don't want one. They want to keep it personal, 1-to-1. So you're just feature dumping all these features that don't link to them. So make sure when you're giving features and benefits, they actually link to that person's outcome that they want, their pains and their goals. They use these little shitty buzzwords and try and make themselves seem fancy and give vague promises. Keep it simple. I like to go with the framework KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Ignore the budget and the timeline constraints. Don't listen to their budget. Don't listen to their timeline constraints. They just, let that go and just try deal with it at the end. Any red flag they give you towards the start or the middle, make sure you tackle that on head first. Ask them what they mean by that and prevent the objection from happening. A lot of people will hear a doubt or an objection that could come by and they'll leave it to the end to try handle it. When you're at the end of the call, you've already finished the call. You don't have much time to play with. But if you hear an objection midway through the call and you deal with it there and then to prevent the objection from happening, you've got a much better chance of dealing with that person and getting them from a maybe or a no to a yes. But if they're at maybe or a no at the end of the call, when you finished your 45-minute time slot, it's going to be very hard to get them on side. Sounding like every other offer, sounding like every other salesperson. That's why at the start I mentioned the pattern interrupt, that we might not be able to help them, because straight away from the start, you won't sound like every other salesperson out there. Now, here's the close and the value stack, and also the close choice, which means we don't give them an open question. We try lead them down to making a decision on the call. So it's important here that you make the perceived value clearly higher than the price, then give a close choice decision. So you need to recap where they are now, where they want to be, the main roadblocks, and that the agreed plan makes sense. Step 2 is the value stack. It's so important. Stack at least 5 clear value points before mentioning the price. Now, why is that? People will buy if they feel like the perceived value is higher than the price. When people say it's too expensive, as a salesperson, it's your fault because you've not built up the perceived value. So what I mean by perceived value is how expensive they see this costing. The more value you bring, the more features you bring and benefits to your product or service, the higher the perceived value. If you do that well enough, at the end of the call, if their perceived value is 6K and your price is 3K, they're going to buy because it's half than what they thought. If you've not done that well enough and you've been very vague about what you offer and how it links to them and features and benefits, their perceived value will be 2.5K and your price is 3K, they won't buy. That's why it's so important to build the value before you drop the price. After value stacking, you need to reveal the full price and finance or monthly option. Now, here's how that could sound on a call. So value stack, of course, then I say, now all of that just comes down to 2,995 or £99 a month. Which of those options works best for you? Now, hear the word all of that. I'm making it seem massive. All of that comes down to, not up, comes down to 2,995. I never really like to use a full price like 2,995 because it makes the price seem higher than it is. When I say 2,995, it seems a little bit smaller, or X amount a month. When you break down the monthly option straight away, it makes it seem cheap because when you put 2,995 next to £99 a month, it just makes it seem so affordable. Whereas if you just let 2,995 sit there, 3 grand just sat there in the head thinking it sounds expensive, with the monthly cost next to it sounds like nothing. Which one works best for you? That is a closed question. They can't say I need to think about it because that's not the option. The option is pay in full or finance. If you say, how does that sound? Or does that sound okay? You're giving them loads of doors to leave. Door one is, I think about it. Door two is, I'll call you back. Door three is, I want to speak to my partner. Door four is, it's too expensive. There's loads of options. If you say which works best for you, there's finance or pay in full. There's two options. That's it. And both options are giving you money in your pocket. So that is the best way to close a deal. Now, with the value stack in the script, here's a few examples. If you're selling for, info products or info owners, you can mention weekly one-to-one mentorship calls, of course, if this applies to them. Access to 60 plus hours of training, private community for feedback/support, templates, scripts, plug and play assets, direct WhatsApp/Slack access, live implementation calls, lifetime updates. Now, with the value stack, you get value one and stack the value with a price. Always add a price. Value two, again, another price worth £500. Value three, worth £600. Value four, worth £200. When you value stack of what they get, such as 60 hours worth of free training, which is worth £3,000 to the normal person, you're adding so much value to your community. And also make sure that the value you're giving is geared towards them and helping them get from their current situation to the desired outcome in X time frame. Now, again, before the price drop, stack at least 5 clear value points before mentioning the price. Beginner mistakes, dropping the price with no value stack, asking weak open questions. How does that sound? What do you think? This is the worst thing here, discounting before they even object. That is the worst thing. You just devalue your product, you devalue yourself. If they object about the price, then you need to retouch about the perceived value and make sure they understand how much value they're getting with this product or service. This is language to avoid. How does that sound? Would you like to go ahead or think about it? If it's too expensive, I can maybe discount. If you use any of this language, you deserve to be a salesperson on 5K commission or 10K commission. That's what you deserve. You need to change that ASAP. Language to use. All of that only comes down to if you were to finance it, it's around this per month. Which of those works best for you? That is a simple 3 sticky notes to use. Now, remember, if the perceived value is higher than the price, they buy. If the perceived value is lower than the price, they stall and want to think about it, or they just simply ghost you. Now, here's a little overview of the mistakes. When you're opening the call or you're in the frame of the call, you've got no agenda, low status energy, and you just seem a bit hyper, which comes across desperate. Diagnosing the pain, you're just not going deep enough or you're talking too much. When you're agitating the problem to make it seem bigger than what it is, you're too soft, or on the other hand, too harsh, which makes you sound like you're a manipulator. When you're presenting the solution, generic pitch not tied to them. Remember, it's not a one size fits all. Everyone's different. When you close, no value stack or weak and open close, don't do that. Now, here's how I train my sales reps at Smile White and how you should train yourself. If you're alone and don't live with anyone or not at a sales company right now, go practice with your friend, your family member, your dog, your cat, whoever. We role play each stage separately. The opening of the call, the diagnosis of the call, the presenting the agitating the pain, the presentation of the package, and the close. We roleplay each stage. Reps must run calls from a one-page structure. There's no long scripts, no scripts they sound like a robot. It's just a one-page bullet point structure. We do weekly call reviews and tag the mistakes by the stage, so we know what stage each person needs to work on, because they might be really good at the close, but really shit at the diagnosis. We have morning hype-up meetings with like a win scoreboard, deals closed, calls booked, 1 to 2 live role plays. Each rep shares one objection they struggle with and how they'll handle it today, and also a mindset reminder. We are high status, we are not needy. Because remember, we're not here to beg for deals, we're here to find the right people and lead them to a decision. Now, here's the implementation. Screenshot the 5 stages and keep them next to your laptop. Before each call, quickly scan the stages, and after each call, think about which stage broke and improve that one next. Focus on one stage per week. Don't bombard yourself, don't confuse yourself, just one stage per week. And DM me the word call, and I'll send you this 5-stage framework as a one-pager, so it's all there where you need it. Also, make sure you save this video if you're a new closer and want a structure to follow, and comment roleplay if you want to see me do live training sessions. I'm very curious to see what you guys want to know more of. But yes, guys, that is all for that Miro board. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all found it helpful. Like I said, there's a few words to send me on Instagram if you want to get the different frameworks that I've shown here and the full Miro board. Let me know in the comments what you want to see more of. I'm hoping this is bringing value to salespeople who want to be doing like my sales team at Smile White, hitting those 20K months, as a lot of them are doing it now. It is very, very possible. You just have to believe in yourself, know how to communicate, know how to, show your personality in the best way possible, because that's what sales is about. It's about communication and personality. That's it. For now, I'm just in Morocco, Marrakesh. It is actually my birthday, midnight on the 15th of December. So yes, it is my birthday, but there's nothing more important than giving you guys great content, and I'm so happy on this content journey, giving you guys all the value that I taught my team at Smile White and I'm still doing right now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one.